Hello everyone, my name is Kay Woodgate. I'm a movement therapist at Move Beyond, and in today's video we are going to talk about exploring how our core really fires up, really works when we go a lot slower than perhaps we've been practicing recently. In my recent classes over the past 4 or so weeks, we've been experimenting with slowing down our movements whilst monitoring what's really going on around our tummy. Now, I had this fantastic question: what muscles am I really using when I'm using my core? To be honest, there is no easy way to tell you that unless somebody scans you with an ultrasound as you move. And at that point, it's possible to see which muscles engage and how strongly. But there are some telltale signs that our core is working optimally or not so. Let me just briefly go through those, and then I'm going to give you an illustration of how we've been approaching the movement slow and self-monitoring, because there is a way to do this which gives us some indication. So first and foremost, when we are working on the floor, on the back, we want our tummy to be flat and not have a sense of popping out in the middle. Or if anyone's got a separation of the tummy muscles, that can manifest as bread loafing. So there's going to be like a ridge that pops out in the middle. So some postnatal ladies can have that, and it can linger into the later years, etc. So that's one symptom that we want to see, that the belly is not doming. A doming belly is a sign that we're not managing the load of the exercise very well, and we definitely want to avoid that. The second clue is feeling heaviness in the pelvic floor, as if you are in a toilet and you're doing your business and you're straining to evacuate, right? We don't want to feel tension down there. We don't want to feel heaviness. We don't want to feel that maybe something is leaking. All of that is a big no-no. Basically, that means our body is bearing down with the pressure onto the pelvic floor. That's not great. Also, we don't want to feel that we're straining, holding the breath, tensing up, clenching the jaw. Or anything else with the upper body, for example, shoulder tension or shoulder lifting. So if any of those signs are coming up for you, that means that that particular exercise at that particular level intensity is a little bit too much for you and you need to scale down, but also you might benefit from changing the way you are aligned on the floor and connecting into your core muscles, into your pelvis and the rib cage. So more on that in a second. So as long as you're not bulging in the belly, pushing the pressure down to the pelvic floor, so bearing down, also over tensing the belly muscles all the time as if somebody is about to punch you in the gut. That's also over recruitment, is not ideal. Or holding the breath, tensing the jaw. We want to avoid those things. So let me tell you what we've been doing in class, and you can do this with me as perhaps your homework exercise or a little experiment, and hit me with any questions. Let me know if you want to explore this approach. So I invite you to find some cushions. Some of you might need some of those, and find a space to lie down on the ground, stretch yourself out on the back and have your knees bent up. So I'm using a little cushion here for my head. I call these bolsters. There's a reason for those. Quite often, if we are laying on the floor, some of us might have things going on in the back or in our neck, and if we find that, for example, the chin lifts up towards the ceiling in a very high way and there's no way to bring it down, we need to prop the head up so that the head is comfortable and the chin is actually looking up at the ceiling and not kind of up and over your head. We also want to see and feel that the back of our rib cage is heavy to the floor. Your lower back is not flattened into the ground and it's not overly arched. But we can check all of that a little bit later as we go through the exercise. So as I mentioned, we can't really tell what muscles we're using, and there's a whole bunch of abdominal muscles. They come in layers, but we can give ourselves a little indication of this. So I invite you to find your frontal pelvic bones. Anatomically, these are called ASIS bones. They're part of your pelvis, and they are like little bony outcrops either side of your tummy. So find them with one fingertip, and then slide inwards from those bones about an inch into the flesh of your tummy, and then up a tiny bit. So you should still be pretty much in line with those bony outcrops, not too high, and you shouldn't be in the midline. You should be fairly close to the outside of your tummy. And have a little feel. First of all, does the left and the right side feel the same in terms of like a little stretched hammock? So we want to feel what your resting tension level is like. And then I invite you to experience what it means to over-recruit your tummy muscles. So imagine somebody's coming over to you, they want to punch you in the gut, and all you've got time for is to protect your belly with a quick tense of the belly muscles. So if you do just that and tense all your belly muscles, can you feel that your fingertip, and I suggest you use one fingertip pointing straight down to the floor, one fingertip feels either side, left and right, quick tension rise up. Now let that go. If you're feeling that, that means you are over-recruiting your belly muscles, and very likely it's a muscle called the internal oblique, because it's very, very, very available and quite strong for a lot of people, not everyone, but a lot of people, and it's very ready to jump in. And this will be particularly the case if you've got particular weakness in the front of your tummy, maybe you've got separation of belly muscles, all those good things. So you might be very prone to tensing that internal oblique muscle. I would like you to keep that as soft as possible throughout this exercise, because we're going to work slow and light. And if we're working slow and light, we don't need to pretend that you're protecting your belly from impact, because it's very mindful and slow work, and it's not very loaded. So feel your buttocks left and right heavy on the floor, fingertips pointing straight down towards the ground, like you want to point them through your tummy towards the floor. And then, with no specific breathing, just normal quiet breathing, as you exhale, perhaps that might be a good idea, as you exhale, gently float your bent right leg into a little tabletop knee float position. And then perhaps a little exhale and release that leg nice and slow downwards. I want you to notice what you felt under your fingertips. Did you feel increase of tension? So let's do this again. Same side, right leg floating up. And then when you're ready, right leg floating down. Your tummy should stay flat, and you can also test that with the palm of your hand swiping down. And you shouldn't feel any heaviness in the pelvic floor. Let's do the other side. As you gently exhale, float the left leg up into a knee float, into tabletop. And then slow as you can, release it down. And then repeat that on the left side. Now, some of you might feel, oh, that's quite easy, no big deal. However, some of us might feel that there is a big deal, and one side is tensing, one side is not, or both sides are clenching and then releasing. So if you're feeling that it's tensing up and then releasing, or flickering on and off, you might want to consider the relationship between your pelvis and your rib cage. So play around with a couple of cues and see whether they help you not create that instant brace. And by the way, that also applies to later stages of this exercise as we add a little bit more. So first of all, imagine you are drawing the frontal pelvic bones towards your face ever so slightly, and then check your movement. Did that become less clenchy and more stable? If that didn't work, go the other way. Tip your frontal pelvic bones away from your face. That will increase the arch in your lower back. And check that approach. Some of us might have to think about some other spaces in the rib cage. For example, letting go of the base of the rib cage and letting that be nice and loose, but higher up it's as if we're increasing a little bit of tension in the mid-ribs, as if you're feeling the engagement of the mid-ribs and drawing the mid-ribs into the center of your body. Also make sure that you're adjusting your head and your upper body remains calm. So find the position with the lower back depth to the floor that you're not bracing here. And then everybody's going to proceed further. So again, back to the right leg, we're going to float the right leg up, hopefully nobody's bracing, and then we're going to reach that leg and bring it back into a knee float. So this is basically a stretch, point the foot, stretch the knee, and the bend. So experiment with this. This is slightly more loaded, and we want to remain just as quiet in those corners of your tummy. And then check the other side. If one or both sides are now beginning to grip and tighten, remember this is not a loaded movement. We're not trying to lift a big weight and hang it off the end of your foot. We should still be quite quiet, and the tummy should stay flat. It shouldn't be bulging or doming. So again, adjust your pelvis, maybe tip your pelvic bones towards you or away from you. Everyone's different. I don't know how you are organized to help you in your specific case. I'm very happy to chat to you over Zoom or in person if you're local to check your presentation. However, once we've got that corrected, the next level would be to stretch your leg and then lower and lift. At this point, we're beginning to monitor something else even more closely. So whilst you're moving your leg nice and slow, I want you to continue checking for tension and for flatness of your belly, and that you're not gripping in the pelvic floor, pushing the pressure down. But then when you bend the leg back into a knee float and you softly release that foot back down with the knee remaining bent, I want you to check, did your pelvis just feel like, oh, it came out of a slight rotation when my foot softly landed on the floor? That becomes really important as we progress and stay there with that leg longer and longer up in the air. Because when we're moving like this, we're looking for our deep muscles to stabilize how our pelvis is positioned and keep it stable. If we're not very stable, we will be pulled into a little rotation. We might not realize that until we bend the knee, slowly land the foot back down, and oh, feel that. All of a sudden, one buttock feels like it dropped back to the floor. That's a great clue that we're not stable enough in that pelvis movement and leg movement. So work less fast. So perhaps don't stretch the leg all the way, but scale back to the knee floats and see whether you're also doing exactly the same rotation, derotation thing there as well. And I strongly recommend you do not proceed to the next variation until you become stronger in this one. Next variation, for people who are stable, we can move the leg as if you're doing the cycling. So you're going to go through these and continue adjusting your pelvis and the depth of your lower back to the floor without pushing the other foot into the ground for stability. Let's go and cycle backwards and see if you can remain tummy flat, breathing normally. not over tensing in the pit of your belly, and also not sensing that you've got all of a sudden that sudden tension drop, like your tension just disappeared, like as if you had a hammock and it was cut off the supports and it just went floppy. We don't want that either. Try the other side, cycling forwards and see if what that side feels like. Check with your awareness that the opposite buttock of the leg that's moving, the opposite buttock stays heavy to the floor. Let's go cycle the other way. And then again, go through your checkpoints. Are my shoulders relaxed? Is my face quiet? Jaw not tensing? I can breathe through this normally. This is not very loaded. We should be able to do this without those telltale kind of clenchy compensation signs. And then release down. The last thing I'm going to ask you to do is you're going to find yourself something to squeeze between the knees, like a cushion. Some of you have got a deflated ball at home. That will be also quite nice. Let me just reach for something here. And if you find an object that you can grab, come back to the floor and place that object that you can squeeze, seriously, the cushion will be quite okay, between your knees, and then go back to your monitoring. Same places in your lower belly. And then I want you to squeeze that object and soften. And as you're squeezing and softening, I want you to check that you're not overly tensing. In fact, that you shouldn't be really responding all that much at all. And if you're over-responding, that might mean you're over-engaging the muscles. There's nothing wrong with remaining quiet and maybe acquiring a tiny bit more tension. But if you're finding that you're clenching and bracing, your belly is popping up, or you're bearing down to the pelvic floor, then we need to see how you're using this squeeze between the knees, as you might be overly clenching your deep core muscles, which is not really that great either, because it's not a very strong movement and we get exhausted at a very low level of work. So that's a good one to try. And yes, there is one more I wanted to show you. No props. Again, monitoring in the same place. And then what you're going to do is you're going to give me a little pelvic tilt. So imagine you're rolling your pubic bone towards your face, and that will flatten your spine a little bit into the floor, and then roll it away from your face. So that's a pelvic tilt. You can also initiate it using a different cue. Think about rolling your frontal pelvic bones towards your face. Towards your face and back out again to a level tummy. Also, this results in your back flattening to the floor. Or you can initiate it by thinking that you're swishing the tip of your tailbone towards your face. Same movement, but it might result in a kind of better understanding of the movement for some people. Now, either which way, your spine ends up flattening and giving the arch of the lumbar spine that's rebuilding. However, if you're not clenching in the pit of your belly, you will be doing a great job by moving through your spine, and it's more likely to mobilize your vertebrae and allow you to roll through them in the lower back. But if you're forcing this movement by gripping at the front of the body, which assists some people to get into this movement, we're not really moving through the spine. We are forcing ourselves, exactly that, into the movement, and we're having a different experience. We are overworking to do this, and it's unlikely to result in such a beneficial movement, light and easy in the lower back. Try it both ways. Try to brace and force yourself into a pelvic tilt and let go, And now keep that area soft and move through your spine and move one of those bony points of your pelvis towards your face, whatever resonates better, and let go. And then it's always interesting to see how it's worked for you personally. So I hope that you have fun exploring this. I hope it makes sense. I've had some fantastic questions this month about what it means to work the core, and some people rightly ask, because we get bombarded with that information, isn't core work gripping and clenching the tummy? No. It can be when we're lifting a heavy load. We have to brace. For example, if you were lifting 3 times your body weight in a competition, there is no way you can do this like this, right? Absolutely no way. You need to mobilize all your resources. But in day-to-day work, when we're lifting a bag of shopping, we want to, when we're lifting a kettle that we've just filled up, or some light weights perhaps, we want to use the least amount of effort necessary for this activity. So for a little leg float, that needs to be quite little. For a very heavy bag of shopping, definitely a little bit more. But if we habitually overwork, the body finds it more difficult to figure out what it needs to recruit. And certainly if we clench on purpose, the body's natural decision making about what it needs to do with core stability and recruitment is kind of overridden by us going, oh, I need to squeeze my tummy. We are after building a reflexive core so that your brain and your body can decide, here I'm lifting a slight cushion, that's no load at all, hardly anything, so I just need a tiny bit. Oh, and I've got this kettlebell over there, this kettlebell here, I need a bit more for that. So the body can use its wisdom and make that decision. I hope that makes sense. I hope you found that useful. Hit me with any questions that you like. This is Kay Woodgate speaking about core engagement and being optimal and not overworking and not bracing during your core work. Have a lovely rest of your day, and I will speak to you soon. Bye for now.